Hello, I am Evan Milburn. He, him, his. Hold on. That's better. He, him, his. I'm blonde hair, blue eye male. I'm white. I'm wearing brown shirt. Do you want to introduce yourself, Mark?
Yeah, I'm Mark Roberts, and I've been invited to be interviewed for about my history with my brother Ed Roberts.
Okay. So, who was the older brother in the relationship? Was it you or him?
Ed was the first child of my parents, so he's the old guy. He's like 10, almost 11 years older than me. So my very big brother.
Seriously, that's definitely. So, I guess we don't have to really ask, but how did you meet Ed Roberts?
Well, the first time I met him, I don't remember, but because I was pretty little when I was born,
Yeah.
I was born very young, and
Yeah.
and I didn't have experience of remembering things too much then,
Yeah.
so I might have been remembering past lives. But my first memory of him, though, was and the only one I have of him when he was walking, because I was only 3 years old when he got polio, and so I just remember one time going across the street with my other old brother Ron. So Ron was 2 years, a little bit less than 2 years younger than Ed, and they were running across the street to go to the football grandstands to see if anybody had dropped change out of their pockets onto the ground underneath them. And I wanted to go after them, but my mother grabbed me and pulled me back out of the street. And so that's the only time I remember Ed walking. And so that's how I was introduced to him, by not being able to go, not being old enough to go with him to go score some loot.
Yeah, I as a younger brother myself, I have two older sisters. I have definitely a lot of memories of being stuck at home with my parents while my both my siblings went off and had fun.
Yeah.
So,
oh, the things you can't do when you're a little baby.
Yep. Especially when you're the youngest. And although I'm sure we can make an argument that we probably get away with more because we're the favorite. Well, I joke that I'm a favorite, but since we're the youngest, we probably get away with a little more. So.
Right. Well, and parents, as a parent of two boys myself, I see the difference. The first one is like a precious little egg, and the second one is like a robust creature of the forest. It's like a whole different experience. So they were a lot less concerned about my, protecting me from things, and so I was exposed to things, and also they're pretty used to it and not so worried. So they were given quite a bit of freedom too, because we lived right across the street from the high school, and they were quite athletic, and so they got to go and play a lot.
Okay, so what role did Ed play on your life?
Well, he was pretty formative for my existence, because I was expected to join in and helping, in everything that he needed, from, just little things like being able to scratch his nose, would you rub my nose? Would you scratch my ear? Would you put a Q-tip in to my ear? Would you hold the urinal? Would you wipe my butt after you use the bedpan? Would you feed me? So it's like, bathing, when I got older, to help carry him to the bathtub and into his wheelchair and things like that. So it was pretty formative for me from a very young age.
Yeah, there's definitely that. I think that there's no recognition for the brothers or siblings of the people with disabilities, because it's usually usually them and the parents who step up majorly and help raise what we all know, especially in the case of village to raise a child, but it really does sometimes. In Ed's case, I'm sure it did, just by what he had to do with polio.
Yeah, it's true.
What he had to deal with because of his polio. Sorry, should say that. So how that influence you? How he influenced you?
Well, it gave me a lot of, I think, a good start in empathy, and being able to be inside somebody else's body in a way, that I was the kind of the muscles for his existence in a way. So and also he was really smart and funny and a really warm person, and so I learned a lot from him. He was sort of like the best kind of father you could possibly have. It's like somebody who had time, always had time to spend with me, because he was just there. He was just there 24/7 essentially, except when he wasn't. For the first 10 years of my life when he was at home, and then he went off to the university, and so for a little while I saw less of him there while he was going to school, but he was pretty central to my life for a lot of my life.
Uh, uh, so, describe your impressions of Ed. What was his personality like?
Well, he was funny. He loved jokes. We'd always be watching TV, eating. He loved food, and so just eating together. A bite for him and a bite for me, and just hearing the kind of the soothing noise of an iron lung. I don't know if you've spent much time around an iron lung, but it's got this kind of gentle whirring, whooshing kind of a sound, and very steady, kind of a calming sort of a influence in the house, just to have this big machine going with my brother in it.
Yeah. No, I unfortunately I had most experience with iron lungs, but I do have a CPAP machine which makes similar noise.
Yeah.
So, despite the fact I have a love-hate relationship with it, the one thing I do like about it is it does make some calming noise.
Yeah.
Before I fall asleep.
And people would think who were strangers to the situation would be horrified by the idea of being kind of entombed in this giant metal tube. But to him, it was a great pleasure and a relief to be in there. He felt very safe and protected, and like it would breathe for him. So he could breathe on his own, but it took some muscular energy of his throat to swallow air into his lungs when he was out of the lung. When I was young, he could get out of the iron lung for hours at a time. He had really developed good muscles in his throat to do the frog breathing, we call it, the feral laryngeal, whatever they call it. There's a name for it, but frog breathing is a simpler way.
Yeah, it's the technical term of it. No, I think I've heard that common theme of he was smart and funny. And so what wisdom did Ed pass on to you?
Well, I think the wisdom that really lingers and comes on is that what was learning wisdom about disability. It's just that of the need for equality for people, for cripples like him. A lot of people at Cowell were mostly men who had broken their necks, as boys, young men, broken their necks diving. Don't dive into water and hit rocks with your head. That's a very a common way for people, at least in the early days at Cowell Hospital, to break their necks. But so it was, I think, the wisdom of the political wisdom that if you speak up for yourself and you draw attention and you not only ask for your needs to be considered, but that you put up a fuss about it and bring it to attention, because the disability movement has a lot of there's a lot of pity and fear from people, but there's also a lot of care and wanting to help and respect that is there too, and to appeal to that, to say, hey, we want to be included, and here's how we're being treated, and to appeal and make a fuss. They learned how to do that really early. So that's some of the wisdom he taught me, like about religion, for example. So I came back from the 6th grade. We had a talk in class about religions of the world, and I asked him what religion he was, or what, and so he had me guess, religion he was. And so I was trying to guess, and I said, well, what do you think I ought to be? What kind of religion do you think I ought to be? And he said, well, if they ask you in school, tell them you're a Zoroastrian diabolist. So a Zoroastrian diabolist. I had never heard of that before, but I memorized it, and I don't remember anybody ever asking me. But I told my friends that, yeah, I thought it was a Zoroastrian diabolist, and so just stuff like that, kind of philosophical things, and kind of critique of the major culture, and yeah, wisdom of knowing. He kind of knew himself. He learned how to accept himself early on after really hating himself and not wanting to live. For the first part, after he became paralyzed, he really didn't see the point of living anymore, because he was such a, like I said, he's so athletic before, and that seemed to be the whole point. He hated school, and now, so it turned it on its heels. Now his domain where he became comfortable was inside. It was his intellect, and being able to speak. And so he turned the energy of athleticism and being a star that way to what turned out to became a star in the political world in disability rights.
Yeah, no, that definitely must have been hard, that adjustment from being like a star quarterback, a star pitcher, to being the guy in the Iron One.
Yeah, and he felt
Especially at
really
that younger
ugly.
age, when you have aspirations of major leagues and stuff.
Yeah, and he just thought he was very ugly. He didn't have any muscles on his body, so he was just like skin and bones, really, and couldn't move. His head and neck were, just normal size, and movable. He could move everything about his head, but so he didn't feel like he'd be anything for people that they'd want to look at him without being disgusted, because he was kind of disgusted at first himself. But as when he went back to high school, then my mom made him go back in person to high school, because he went by radio telephone for his first few years. But then she said, I've got to have a life. You've got to have a life. You've got to get out. You've got to go in person. He didn't want to. He thought he was a freak, that he looked really weird. But my other brother, Ron, he was like really handsome and a star tennis player and basketball player, and he was a very popular guy. So when the first day that he went back to school, at first he was really afraid people would stare at him, but he realized people wouldn't. He'd look at people and they'd look away. They didn't want to be caught staring, and so they wouldn't stare. And then having my brother Ron push him down the halls of Burlingame High School for the first time, these cute girls would come up and say, "Oh, hi, Ronnie. Oh, hi, Eddie. I've been in your class, and it's so good to see you finally. And oh, can I push him? Can I push your chair?" And so the first day, it was like a total turnaround from being a freak to being a star. And he literally felt that way about the first day. He got over that fear of people looking at him to, I'm Ron's brother. I'm Ed. People know me. They like me. I'm not a freak. I'm somebody they want to know.
Yeah, I'm Mr. Popular, but all the girls are falling over me.
Yeah. He liked you, and he increasingly became a ladies' man, and would flirt and solicit, and come on to women and girls. Really like that.
Yeah. I definitely know what it's like to be known as a freak, but also known as Mr. Popular. So it's been interesting. So it's interesting to hear about Ed and how he kind of managed that balance. So what was Ed's legacy? What was Ed's legacy more broadly, do you think?
What was his legacy? What?
More broadly.
Oh, more broadly. I thought you said on Broadway. I was trying to remember when he was on Broadway. No.
Was he on Broadway?
So when I travel, it's like seeing curb cuts and accessibility, universal design. That's what strikes me. It always is like that happened out of, it was. I mean, there were people before, there are cripples before Ed, but he was there at the right time in the right place to be a leader in the movement that led to the legality of access to curb cuts, to accessible airplanes, like going on an airplane with him on his first airplane trip was my first airplane trip. And I was 19 and he was 29, 30. We went to Washington, D.C. And just to get onto the airplane in the first place, it took a lot of red tape just to get on there and then carry him in and stuff. It was a real difficult process. And so seeing people be able to travel and have access in different parts of the world too. When I go to Europe and see that it's all over the world, that this is being accepted, that you're not going to be locked in a back room. You've got access. You're expected to work and to make a living and parent and just be a person, just have a life, with the rest of us.
As my mother would used to say, various IEP means he's going to grow up to be a taxpayer one day.
Yeah. Great.
I still remember that vividly. So that was the main takeaway. When teachers can't think I would, it's I want my son to grow up to be a taxpayer.
Well, that's in being another way of saying paying taxes is like you contribute to society. And I remember Ed, he would talk about it, and it's recorded, him talking about how for him, receiving and getting things, being at the receiving end all the time is one thing. When he could contribute to other people and saw that his life had meaning for other people and he could help other people, that really made, we all want to contribute. It's a part of our need is to give, and it gives us the most pleasure when somebody's in need of help from our resources that we have, either just listening to people or helping in any way. And so when he was able to do that, when he was becoming a teacher at Berkeley, or he could talk with people and especially with other crippled people, that to ask about them and to look after them and to give them permission and kind of a role model of being powerful in the world and asking for what you want without reservation, without any shame. That was a very big a joy to him to be able to contribute. So tax-paying citizen, helpful member to other people. It's what makes life worth living.
Yeah, no, I guess it's definitely something. I we always push talk about Ed, but I've just in my 25 years of living, I've had a lot of people help me get to where I am. So it's nice to be. I feel like it's almost a responsibility for me now just to pay it forward in a way of giving back to you, giving back to whomever needs it. I don't really, that's what I want to do in my life. Is I want to help people with disabilities, just because I've had so many people help me. It's like a calling. It seems to be like a calling to me that it's my turn to kind of take the mantle and run with it, as it were.
Yeah.
So what was Ed like as a kid? You knew him when he was 10, 13?
Yeah. So yeah, he was 14 years old when I was born, so 13, 14. He was 10, but he got polio when he was 13, 14. But I just knew him from the iron lung or the hospital bed. That's where he spent time. And then occasionally, when I got to push his wheelchair and hanging around in the summertime, listening to baseball games on the transistor radio, out in the backyard underneath the apricot tree, listening to Giants games. He was a big San Francisco Giants fan. So mostly it was like talking with him and watching sports with him and just doing normal things. And then, I had my own friends and my own things that I would do, but family life was really seemed like a really important thing to me. Really enjoying my mom and Ed for the most part. And my dad would take us fishing, and he really liked to go out on the bay in his boat. And we just lived about a quarter mile from the San Francisco Bay, so he'd take me out fishing. My younger brother once in a while,